Hello friends, and welcome to the Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, if you are a returning visitor, you probably already know that this is my series in which I use tarot and oracle cards to explore topics related to living the intentional life. And before we dive into this week's spread, I want to check in with you. Have you ever heard about inner child work? Doing inner child work. Doing inner child work has become a popular notion in pop psychology, and it's also popular in the tarot community. In fact, along with our decks for shadow work and our decks for love relationships and our decks for work, a lot of us also have decks specifically designated for child work. I don't personally, but I know a lot of tarot readers who do. It's a very important topic to the community. And it is an important topic, I believe. What do you think of if you have heard of the term inner child work? What does that call to mind? Generally, it refers to doing the work of healing the traumas and the suffering, the loneliness, the abandonment that we felt when we were children. Have you felt any of that? Did you ever feel abandoned when you were a child? I know I have. I felt very abandoned when I was abandoned. Well, not completely abandoned, but I was left behind at school by my mother after a play one time. And had sat outside the school waiting for her to come back for what felt like hours. Maybe it was only about half an hour, but still, it felt very traumatic. Also, my mother moved away to another country when I was in third grade, and that felt a little bit abandoning too. So I've had things that happened that I experienced trauma, or I created trauma around. That's the way I would refer to it for myself, that I had experiences around which I created trauma. And that is important work to do, I believe. Healing those traumas within, the pain within, is important work. However, I think with all of our focus on healing and trauma, when we think of our inner child, we're missing the point. We think of ourselves as we're the big adults, and we have this little, poor, pathetic, wounded child within us that needs to be healed. And it's true, that poor child within us does want healing. However, what about when the child does receive, if not full, at least partial healing? Is the child's existence, is that inner child's existence merely as a symbol of pain and suffering? Or is there something else there? Is there a power there? Is there guidance there? Is there wisdom there? Is it possible that that inner child could, when revealed, become our superpower? That's what this week's tarot and oracle spread, I believe, is pointing us towards. To reframe, to re-envision our inner child, not as poor, weak, helpless, but as a powerful being within us that we want to allow to reveal itself as we heal the layers and layers of pain that are covering it right now. So friends, we've got a very interesting, deep, important, revealing spread for us this week. Let me show you. What did you think? If you are a returning visitor, you probably thought to yourself, wow, he changed the decks again. And yes, I did. The new moon has come and gone, and I have changed out my decks for this new lunar cycle. And what did you think? What did you think of this new layout, the new cards, the way they looked in a spread together? Frankly, I wasn't sure how they would work together. And so I got them home. I went through my normal ritual of getting to know the deck, doing an interview, all of that stuff. And then practically the next day, I went in and did my first reading with these cards together for the week ahead spread, my big spread. It was my first reading with these cards. And I was frankly stunned at how well the cards looked together and how well they spoke around and with each other. I think these cards are going to serve us very well for this lunar cycle. And if you are a first-time visitor, let me give you a brief overview of what you just saw. In the center, you noticed there were 5 cards. They're from an oracle deck. And the cards in the center, this time it was 5. Last lunar cycle there were 3. But this time I pulled 5 because of the kind of deck it is. They give us the thesis statement or the introduction paragraph of this essay of a spread. So the 5 cards in the center give us the thesis statement, and then around those oracle cards, you notice there were 4 groupings of 3 cards. One of the cards was an inquiry card, a card with a question on it, and then the 2 cards on top of it were tarot cards from 2 different decks answering that question. So friends, we've got this gorgeous, deep, meaningful spread to dive into. Let's dive into the oracle cards first. I didn't mention that if you are interested in any of these decks, in the names of the decks and the creators, there will be a clip at the end of this video giving you that information. And also at the bottom of this video, in the description box, there will be links so that you can go and examine these decks on your own and perhaps buy one or all of them if you're interested. I don't get any remuneration if you use those links. They're just there for your convenience. And to my knowledge, all of these decks, which are mass market decks, except for the inquiry cards, are in publication, are readily available, and even the inquiry cards have been in print for over 2 years, and you should have no problems getting those either, if you're interested. So, promo over, let's get back to the oracle cards, the 5 oracle cards. Now, why are there 5? I usually use 3 cards in the center, but this is a sacred geometry deck. And so, as it is a sacred geometry deck, I thought it would work well as an elemental spread, a 5-card, 5-element spread. So in the center, there was ether for spirit, and then around that central card, there were 4 for earth, air, water, and fire. Yeah, which are the Western elements. Now, in the East, there is a completely different set of 5 elements. Now, there is Hua, Su, Mok, Gum, To. Hua, fire. Su, water. Mok, wood, tree. Gum, metal. To, earth. So there are those 5 elements in the East. In the West, we have, again, fire, water, air, and earth, plus a center card for ether. And the way these cards came out, I decided instead of reading them from the center and around, starting from spirit, which I would naturally usually want to start with, this layout of cards wants to be read from the other end of the spectrum. Now, I see the elements lining up from spirit into fire, into water, into air, and then to earth as a descent into physical manifestation. However, I think this spread wants to be read ascending from earth into air, into water, into fire, and then into spirit. And if you're curious about why I arrange the elements in that way, ask me in the comments below to do a video about that. It would be a really short video, but I can talk about that if you like. But we are going to start with Earth. And the Earth card was in the bottom left, and that was the card that said the lesson. The lesson. And you saw that this was a flower of life image in the center. There was a figure below it, an angelic looking figure holding this geometrically designed circular figure, kind of like a mandala. But this is called the flower of life. And this card is reminding us to consider what lessons we are learning. Now, I use the word lessons with caution, with a caveat. Lessons. A lot of us talk about coming into the physical to learn the lessons of life. And once we've learned the lessons, we can ascend or something of that nature. However, if we equate lessons of life to lessons in school, I think we create a misunderstanding. When we think of lessons in school, there are things that someone decides that we need to learn. Yeah? There is a curriculum laid out by someone else, and they plug us in so that we have to learn this thing and then that thing and then that thing, and then we take a test and we see if we learned it, and then we can graduate or move on to the next level. That's not the way life works, the way I understand it. I think that is a misunderstanding of the idea of lessons of life. Lessons of life are not things that somebody or anything is placing upon us. They're not things that we are given to learn. They're things that we choose to experience. And from those experiences, we grow, we evolve, we expand. Which is different from the educational model. This is a self-exploration model where we make choices. We choose to have this experience. We choose to have that experience. And as we have that experience, there are things that we like and that there are things that we don't like. There are things that are surprising and there are things which are disappointing. And sometimes surprising and disappointing overlap. And all of those segments, parts, pieces of the experience help us grow, help us understand things differently, more specifically. We make new choices. We modify what the next experience we want to have. We perhaps change the course of our lives. We change the direction of the powerful flow of our intentions, because the flow, the direction of the intention that we are riding is directed by us, not by anybody else. There's no divine or angelic or Akashic being who is out here saying, you need to learn this, pow. You need to learn that, pow. And if you don't learn that, then you're going back to the back of the class and you're going to have to take that lesson again. That's not the way it works, I don't think. There are things that we experience over and over because we have not learned what we wanted to learn from them. But it's not because someone is making us have that lesson over and over again. It's because we've perhaps hit a wall in our experience. And so we're not ready to pass beyond that wall. We still have to learn something to move forward. Yeah, we're allowing something in our lives to hold us back. No one's keeping us from moving forward. We are allowing something in our lives to hold us back, to weigh us down. And until we free ourselves of that, we keep having the same experience. Again, not because anybody is forcing it on us, not because anyone is making it happen for us. It's because of who we are and the way we are being in the world. So if we can understand lesson of life in that way, that it's not something that is placed on us, something that is a curriculum that we have to fit ourselves into and get through. If we can see that lessons of life are the experiences that we have chosen for ourselves, that we have moved in the direction of, then we're all good to go. Then yes, consider what lessons we are learning. That's what this card is here to tell us. And to remind us that this earth can be a joy-filled and magical school for us. Again, a school of our own design where we are the teacher and we are the student. And this is why this card falls into the earth realm. Because those experiences, the lessons, are the physical experiences we have in this physical universe. They're not the spiritual lessons. They're not even necessarily the mental lessons yet. They're the experiences, the stuff we put ourselves through in this physical environment that we learn from, that we meditate on, that we ruminate on, that we remember or we forget. But first there is the experience of us in these physical bodies, in this physical universe. And those are the things that we learn from as we interact with other physical bodies in this physical universe. We learn from experience. And that brings us to a wider perspective, our evolution. And so we have this flower of life, right? We have this angel, us, the eternal being that we are. If you see that angel in this card holding the flower of life as us, the eternal nature that we are in these physical bodies, holding up this flower, this ever-expanding, evolving flower, not of death, not of boredom or of education, but of life. This card, not the flower, this card is here to remind us to absorb the information that we receive as we are having these experiences. And though that information is in the form of energy, of emotion, of and also of facts and figures, right? There are many different kinds of information that we receive in the physical form. So absorb that, receive that, and use that to support our joy. Use it to support our freedom. Use it to support our growth. That's what this card is here to remind us of. These physical experiences that we have, as we learn from them, as we expand from them, we can allow them to support our joy. And whether they support our joy or they support our anger is our choice. The same experience can be a support for our joy, that I get it, or a support for our anger. It shouldn't have been that way. This is wrong. And that is our choice. We choose how we react to the circumstances of our life. And sometimes choosing joy, choosing freedom, choosing growth can be very challenging. But if we don't choose it this time, we'll have an opportunity to choose it the next time. So this card, the lesson, again, not something that anyone else is imposing upon us, but something that we get from the physical experiences that we have as beings in these bodies, interacting with other beings in bodies in this physical universe. Does that make sense? Do you see why this is the beginning? Because remember, these experiences, these lessons can be the support for our joy, for our freedom, for our growth, but they can also be the reason for our pain, for our suffering. Well, we can allow them to be the reason for our pain, for our suffering, for our feelings of abandonment, those things that we believe are the cause for the wounded inner child. Those things that we believe are the cause for the wounded inner child. We don't get it wrong. We're not doing anything wrong when we feel wounded. We're not doing anything wrong when we feel angry, when we feel abandoned. It's not like we're doing something wrong. It's just that we might have made another choice. And instead, we have accepted an experience that is wounding. We've accepted woundedness as a result of an experience. That's better said. And that's okay, because we can heal. So what is the next card? The next card was 2. Well, I'm sorry, no, it wasn't number 2. The second card is the Pentagon. The Pentagon, what does that mean? Well, in this deck, the Pentagon reminds us that sometimes we feel the need to protect ourselves from perceived threats. Have you ever felt the need to protect yourself from a threat? I know I have, many times. And they could be threats of many varieties. They could be emotional threats. They could be verbal threats. They could be physical threats. I've had a person tell me in the dark that they had a gun pointed at me. And I perceived that as a threat at the time. I suppose you could probably understand that. However, I'm here. I'm still here. So we perceive threats. And when we do perceive a threat, what do we want to do? Do we want to first react and put up a wall, put up a barrier, put up a defense? I mean, is that the best first reaction? This card is here to remind us that that is not the best first reaction. The best first reaction is to analyze what threatens us. We have this fight, flight, freeze, and there's one more that I heard of recently, but I know the fight, flight, freeze reaction. Fight, flight, freeze, and maybe even faint, I don't know. But fight, flight, freeze, which are reactions that we carry through from when we were less than human. And when I say less than human, I'm thinking of primates and before. Yeah, we carry those reactions through our evolutionary development as a species. So they're still there. And when we see a threat, when we were human, many, many years ago, I'm not talking about when you were a child or when your grandparents were children or when your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents were children, but rather many years ago, like the Neolithic period. Our having retained that fight, flight, freeze reaction was still very beneficial for us as a species. It kept us here and alive. However, now, in modern society, in industrialized, post-industrialized countries particularly, but in most countries as well, I believe, we don't need that fight, flight, freeze reaction to be our first reaction anymore. And because we're still relying on that, we cause ourselves an inordinate amount of stress. That's the word, an inordinate amount of stress. We see another car in traffic doing something we think it shouldn't do, and instead of realizing that that person is not necessarily out to get us, we go into flight, fight, freeze mode, and our cortisol levels spike, and we get angry and defensive. Some of us roll down our windows and start yelling at the other person, whether they can hear us or not. We engage that fight, flight, freeze reaction far too often in modern society. Far too often for our well-being, in fact. So this card is here to remind us And you'll notice this is in the mental sphere. Yeah? Right above the earth is the air, the mental sphere. This card is here to remind us to check in first. What is the threat? Before we throw up a wall, before we go into fight, flight, freeze, we want to develop the habit of inquiry. What is the threat? Is it a physical threat? If it is a physical threat, then we do something about that. We get support. We find a way to escape. We can engage that fight, flight, freeze, and the benefits that we can still have from that, get ourselves out of the situation, find a way to defend ourselves, find a way to get support for us, find a way to escape and extract ourselves from whatever situation it is. But for most of us, most of the time, those perceived threats are not physical threats. They're emotional threats. They're mental threats. They're even spiritual threats. Spiritual threats like you read tarot, you look at tarot cards, you're going to hell. A spiritual threat. You do what with which gender of your species, you're going to hell. A spiritual threat. There are threats in many forms. Physical threats we want to deal with as quickly and as expediently as possible. Get ourselves to safety, yes. Emotional threats and mental threats we can reframe. And a lot of the time, the emotional threats, the mental, the spiritual threats are a result of lack of attention or to listening to our inner guidance. We wouldn't get ourselves into positions of being threatened mentally, spiritually, emotionally, if we listened to our inner guidance, to the voice from within, to the what we call the inner being, yeah? The eternal beings that we are still resides with us, of course. And that eternal being that we are is offering us information 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, etc. plus. And this card is here to remind us that, okay, sometimes we get ourselves into these places where we feel threatened emotionally, mentally, spiritually, because we haven't really listened to our own guidance. We haven't really followed the powerful current of our intention and have gone in another direction. Because we felt like we needed to, because we felt like everybody else was doing it, because we were acting according to somebody else's life plan. Or taking someone else's life plan upon us. So this card is here to remind us to act according to our inner knowing. And when we do happen to stumble upon an emotional threat, I'm not going to love you anymore if you do X, Y, Z. Or don't you know that I love you? I don't want to be your friend. You're stupid. You don't know anything. You are an evil being. You are possessed by a demon. All of those things. Our inner being, our inner self, our inner knowing knows that those threats are also immaterial, unimportant. They have no real effect on us unless we allow them to. So instead of putting up a barrier, a defense against those kinds of threats, we may learn to be able to let those things just pass us by. Not an easy thing to do. It would be nice if we had classes in that when we were in elementary school, but we don't. And so this is one of the things that we want to learn as we grow, as our eternal beings having these human experiences. And so when we perceive a threat, remember, the air is also a card of perception. The air suit or the air element is also a card of perception. So when we perceive a threat, we want to analyze it first. Again, a mental activity. Is this a physical threat? If it is a physical threat, if someone's coming at me with a knife, a gun, or a wrench, or their bare fists, I want to get myself to safety. Yes. I want to protect myself. Yes. Barring that, if someone's just blowing off steam, projecting their pain upon us in one way or another, we can make another choice. We can still leave if we want to, sure. We don't need to stand there and take it. But we don't need to put up a wall against it either. We don't need to block ourselves off from experience either. We can allow that experience to wash over us and learn from it. And so this mental card moves us into the third card of the 5, which is invitation. And in this card, what did we see? It's a beautiful card, I thought. Invitation is, did you know there was a being there? Behind perhaps a net or a matrix of energy with a bright light coming out of perhaps here the solar plexus of what a human form being might be. If you saw a human form in that being's shape, this would be where the solar plexus would have been, and coming up. Which is wonderful, because right around here, this is our emotional space, right? And this third card is the water card, the card of emotions, the card of intuition, the card of that kind of creativity. Not the fire creativity, but the water creativity, And this is an invitation from other dimensions. And when we think of other dimensions, you can take that to mean whatever you want it to mean. Do you want it to mean 10 dimensions, 108 dimensions, like there's this dimension and there's a parallel universe and another parallel universe? There are many ways to understand the idea of dimension, and we won't get into that here. But this is a card of an invitation from or to another dimension. And it's here to remind us that our heart is a portal, a stargate, to the unity of all. And that's the way I read this other dimensions card, as the unity, the oneness of all. Not even this physical universe, of all. The physical universe that is held by and emanates from within the non-physical. And our heart is a portal to union with all of that. Not that we can ever be disunited, that is impossible, but it's a portal to conscious, intentional union with all of that. And this card is here to give us permission to explore. And the way we explore that primarily is through our water, through our emotions, through our intuition, through this water area here, not through the brain, but through our core. And to give us ourselves permission to do that exploration. We are invited to explore. It's also the card of connecting with spirit and our ability to ground and at the same time, okay, I'm sorry, I got myself twisted up here. It's the card of both connection with spirit and our ability to ground. One might think of these two as directions on a spectrum. Yeah, our ability to ground and our ability to connect to spirit. Now, spirit is not necessarily up, and grounding is not necessarily down either. I mean, we imagine these things. Grounding is grounding down into the earth and lifting up in spirit. There are great ways to imagine these things. Of course, when we go into non-physical, there's no such thing as up or down. Perhaps you might think of one as being more physical and one direction as being less physical, more non-physical. And being able to balance those, to bridge those, the physical and the non-physical. That's what this card is also inviting us to do. And to have the courage to do that. It takes a little bit of courage. And a lot of us seem to favor one side to the other. Some of us favor the spiritual, the ether. Some of us favor the grounded, the earthy. And both of them are wonderful, and we have all of that within us, and we are invited here to integrate the whole. To venture forth with that integration as well, because we're not just sitting in meditation throughout our lives. We want to bring that meditation out into the world. We want to bring that integration out into our experience in the world as well. Because experience is all there is, and that's the reason that we're here in these bodies in the first place. And that experience is primarily through our water, I believe. Our experience in the world is primarily through the water. And the water holds so much. The water holds both our unconscious and our conscious as well as the emotions that we have around them. Our emotions, which are our power and also are our indicators of how well we are moving with another form of water, the powerful flow of our intention. So we are invited to do that, to move through the portal, to experience the portal, to connect, to experience the connection that is here at all times. And so we move into the fourth card. Fourth card, very fiery card, invoking the infinite. And this was a very complex card. There was a figure in the center with these symbols within a figure 8. Yeah? And there were columns behind this figure. It almost looked like a vamped up High Priestess card to me. High Priestess in Tarot. Which is wonderful for invoking the infinite, is it not? So, invoking the infinite is here to remind us to actively be involved in healing. Which is an interesting twist to this card, I think. Now, the invoking the infinite is here to remind us to be actively involved in the healing of self and others. To connect our passions and our inspirations to the heart. Now, our hearts are water, believe it or not. Our hearts are water, but we want to connect our fire and our water together because that is where we are the most powerful. That is the state in which we are the most powerful. And then to act with compassion. The water is our compassion as well. And the action is our fire. So we act with compassion. Our intention can be focused on healing as an initial stage to this spread that we're focused on here. Heal ourselves, and then we can heal the others. And our healing is the gift. Our healing of self is a gift to others, as well as our ability to heal others. Now we heal ourselves, and as we are healed, we become a gift. And then we can offer the gift of self and the gift of healing to those around us. And that's where that fire of inspiration and intention flows to. because fire can flow as well. And this moves us into 5, our octahedron, which is the card of the child in this deck. The octahedron is here to remind us that the core of our spirit is our inner child. Is that surprising to you? The core of our spirit is the inner child. It's that being that we were born as into these physical bodies. That is our inner child. That eternal being who is here having a human experience. So this card is here to remind us to connect with that perfect being within us. That inner child is a perfect being. And as it is a child, it is here to play in intention, to play in the current of our intention. And living an intentional life is a playful life, and it's guided by our inner child. So laugh, feel joy. That is our purpose in life. Our purpose in life is to move with intention and laugh and feel joy. Our inner child is curious. Do you remember when you were a child? Have you seen other children around you? Have you seen the curiosity there, exploring, what is this? What can this be used for? What can I do with this? What is it? How do these things interact? What's going on here? Isn't this amazing? There's magic all around me. That is the inner child. It's in a state of eternal growth as well. And we miss out so much when we lose our ability to follow our inner child. We lose out on the magic of these lives we are living. We miss out so much when we forget to listen to and honor our inner child. Because it is really our inner child who is going back into that experience of the earth, the lessons, learning through experience, magical experience. And then reacting. Again, we react in the mental sphere. And sometimes we react and we accumulate wounds. And that's where we begin to hide our inner child under blankets of wounds and trauma. Have you ever thought of that? Thought of it that way? That our wounds and our trauma, they're like blankets that cover up our inner child, who is whole and free and alive and excited and curious, but buried beneath layer after layer of pain and fear and trauma. And that's why we want to do the inner work of healing the inner child, which we got from that fire card again. Remember, healing of self. Because as we heal ourselves, as we heal the wounds and traumas which are covering our inner child, which have buried our inner child, when we heal those and reveal the powerful inner child that is there, then we are the gift for others. We are the gift for ourselves, and we are the gift for the others. And our experience of life in this physical universe is magical. It's powerful. It's brilliant. And I'm not there yet, but that's the direction I know that I want to go in. That's the direction I hope that you can go in, that we can go in together. And that's why these 5 cards, as we flowed through them from Earth, the earth of lessons, the air of experiences and noticing, perhaps, threats, and reacting to those. And then moving into the heart of being able to connect and open to the connection of unity with all that there is, with other dimensions, with spirit, to the oneness of all, and doing the work of then healing those traumas that we experience through our lessons and our reactions to them. And as we do that, we reconnect with the glorious inner child. for the new eon of us. And I'm suddenly thinking of a Thoth card, a Thoth tarot card, which is the eon card of the child of the new eon being ready to be born. And this oracle spread in the center is so deep and so powerful. And still we have 4 questions to ask. So let's take a look at the first question. The first question is, what needs to be completed? Good question to have. Good question to consider. And the 2 cards we had, you noticed, were the Lovers and the Knight of Wands. I loved that Knight of Wands. I hope I remember to tell you why I loved that Knight of Wands in just a moment. But let's start with the Lovers. The Lovers. And this is a very traditional Lovers card. Yeah? A very traditional, almost pre-Rider-Waite, almost a Marseille style, and pre-Marseille style Lovers card. We had a figure in the center with 2 figures to the sides of that central figure, and above that central figure there is an angel guiding or blessing or something. Yeah, and so this card in Tarot de Marseille, but also here, I think can be a card of choices. This figure in the center looks like they have to choose one over the other, choose one partner over the other, which is very possible here. And it looks like that angel is ready to bless either choice. Just choose, dang it. But whatever you choose, we want it to be a clear, definitive choice. And then it will be blessed by the angel above. It's a card sometimes of passion. And perhaps this card here is to what needs to be completed. Yeah? What needs to be completed when we talk about healing the inner child and revealing the inner child might be making the choice to do the work, to do the healing. Because it's not a simple act. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes focus, it takes intention. So maybe that's what this card is here to tell us, to choose to make a loving relationship with self. And then it will be blessed by Spirit. This can also be the card of love, of relationships, again, relationship with self. It's also a card of, in addition to partnerships, to alignment. And perhaps that's another thing that can be completed. We want to complete our alignment. Not that it's something to be finished, but to be completed as in it's put together completely. Our alignment often is incomplete. We're out of alignment. And maybe we want to complete our alignment, because it's when we are aligned, when all aspects of self are aligned, we can be more effective with whatever we're doing. Now, the healing work we want to do within ourselves can be so much more effective when we are in alignment and moving with the powerful current of our intention. So that's one thing that may want to be completed. Yeah? Our alignment, and make the choice for healing self. And then it will be blessed. And when that alignment is accomplished, when we do make the choice to do the loving act of healing ourselves, we can enter into the Knight of Wands. And the Knight of Wands in this card is just amazing. Now, do you know this? Maybe you do. In a lot of the Rider-Waite-Smith-based tarot decks, the wands are associated with the animal of the salamander. And in this Knight of Wands card, different from Pamela Coleman Smith's depiction, we have a knight sitting on a huge salamander. Now, it could be that the salamander is huge or the knight is just very small. But in relationship to the salamander, the knight is large-ish, but not so large that it's impossible for this knight to actually sit on the back of the salamander without completely crushing it. However, I don't know if you noticed this, and this is what makes me laugh, is that poor salamander being sat on by the knight does not look all that happy. That salamander looks like it's feeling the burden of the weight of the knight. Even though the salamander is large in relation to a normal human-looking being, still looks like it's pretty weighed upon and looks pinned down almost by the weight of the knight. Even so, the Knight of Wands is the card of energy. Even though it looks like this knight is crushing his own energy, it's this knight's own energy. This is the card of energy, of passion, of inspired action, of adventure. Now, it's not a card, so in relationship to the question, I don't think it's trying to tell us to get the adventure over with, to complete the adventure, to complete the inspired action, get it done. But rather, to complete our ability to open, to embody the Knight of Wands, to become the Knight of Wands. Whether we're in a male body, a female body, a transgendered body, a non-gendered body, whatever body we're in, to embody the Knight of Wands, a non-gendered Knight of Wands. Now, this card is also a card of impulsiveness sometimes, and impetuousness, and rushing off without fully thinking things out. Sometimes hot-headedness, that's more the Knight of Swords. But rushing off and doing stuff. And sometimes our inner child wants to do that, and we learn from that, and that's wonderful. Sometimes being impetuous can be what breaks us through a barrier. Sometimes being impulsive is how we discover new stuff, discover the magic of the world. And so maybe we want to be impulsive and impetuous sometimes. Not all the time. That's the difference between following the inner child and just being childish, being immature, being irresponsible. That's not what this spread is talking about. That's not what this entire spread is talking about. Following our inner child is not the same as being childish and being immature, but being childlike, with childlike wonder as an adult in the world. And sometimes that Knight of Wands can do that impulsiveness, that impetuousness, that let's play. So what do I want to complete? I want to complete the choice. I want to complete the loving of self. Not completing as in finishing, but completing the choice and completing the alignment to allow the love of self to exist, to be. And then completing the action of becoming the Knight of Wands. Because as a Knight of Wands in this life, we can revel in our experiences and we can live life with passion and enjoyment and joy and excitement and all of those inner child things. And I think that's what these two cards are saying as a response to what wants to be or needs to be completed. Let's take a look at the second question, because I think this flows very easily and nicely into it. The second question is, what am I learning? What are we learning? That's the point of following our inner child, so that we learn more, that we continue learning. Have you ever seen or have you become someone who has decided that they know it all? I don't need to learn anything else. Probably if you are that person, you wouldn't be here watching this. If you are here watching this, maybe you know somebody. Maybe it's one of your parents, maybe it's your partner, maybe it's one of your children, maybe it's a friend. But there are a lot of people who've decided that now they've learned it all. They don't need to learn anything more. They don't want to learn anything more. They just want to live their lives. And that is such a poor way to live our lives. Learning and exploring and growing and evolving and becoming is the joy of living an intentional life, of living life in whatever way we want to live it. And so what am I learning? You notice here we have two cups as an answer to that. They're both emotional cards, intuitive cards. The Queen of Cups. And in this card, did you notice the Queen holding their cup? I want to call it a toga, but it's not really a toga. Let's call it a wrap. Yeah, she's got a cloth that wraps her lower body, and it comes up over her chest, and it goes over her shoulder, and it flows down, and it looks like it flows right into water. The garment that is draped around her flows into water, and there's no separation there. It's a continuous flow. Perfect image for the Queen of Cups. And this is a card of the compassionate one, the nurturing one, the warm, tender heart. Now, some of us think of warm and tender as being a weak thing. I do not agree with that. I do not sign on to that understanding of warmth and tenderness. Warmth and tenderness is a place of strength. A weak person cannot be warm or tender. A weak person necessarily needs to protect themselves. To be able to open, to be warm, to be tender, to be vulnerable is a place of ultimate power. Strength, vitality, love. The card of love for self and for other. An emotionally stable card, but stable and connected. The queens are stable and connected, and in their stability, they also flow. It's not a rigid stability. It's not a contained stability. It's a flowing stability, like rivers and lakes and oceans and rain even. And clouds moving ahead, and the cycle of the water as it comes down and then goes back up and then comes back down again. There's a stability to those cycles as well, because they don't stop. They keep going, even though there are areas that don't get a lot of rain, and there are areas that perhaps get way too much rain. Overall, there is a continued cycle of the water coming down, going up, cleansing, refreshing, refurbishing, flowing, instability. Instability, not instability. There's a difference. In flow as well. So, what am I learning? I'm learning to, as I've completed becoming the passionate Knight of Wands, I'm learning to be also my Queen of Cups. In a male body, in a female body, in a transgendered body, in a non-gendered body, be the Queen of Cups. And I'm also learning the Nine of Cups, because the Queen of Cups necessarily has that Nine of Cups within them. Nine of Cups. And in this card, it's very interesting. Yeah, generally in a Rider-Waite-Smith card. Now, generally, okay, the Queen of Cups in a Rider-Waite-Smith card, in a card designed by Pamela Coleman Smith, we've got a female figure seated in a chair with this goblet with what looks like it might be either demons or angels with black wings on it. It's an ornate, intricate, powerful-looking goblet. Chalice, actually. But seated. This figure, we had a queen standing, the Queen's garments flowing, connected, but active, alive, participating, there, present, mobile. The Nine of Cups card is very different from a Pamela Coleman Smith deck. This is the Pamela Coleman Smith artwork. Generally, what we see is in front of a bright yellow background, there is a tall table or what do you call it? A shelf with a drape in front of it, and on that board there are 9 cups. And in front of that, there is a large male-presenting figure seated on a bench, looking very satisfied with him, her, or their self. But in this card, what do we have? We have a lotus pond with fish swimming beneath in the water. And the Nine of Cups in both forms. It's a card of contentment, of satisfaction, of gratitude as well. This is a card of gratitude for me. And also comfort. Comfort within our material success. Not the material success itself, but the comfort, the emotional response to that. The gratitude and comfort that material comfort can elicit. And I love that in this card we see the fish. The fish have it all in this card. Yeah, they have the sun. These fish can go into the sun and feel the warmth of the sun. They can go underneath the lotus leaves and get some shade if they want. There's plenty to eat. Lotus flowers bloom in mucky water, so there's plenty to eat in this pond as well. These fish are sufficient. And they've got a lot of friends there too, right? They've got friends to slither in and to swim in and around and about and play around and bump up into each other and slither over and, I'm sorry, I keep saying slither, but to glide over and to glide below and to swim beside and room to play and to be satisfied, to enjoy life in their space. So I love this card, and that's what I'm learning to do. Because the Queen of Cups, yes, can be nurturing, warm, and tender to all those other people and to themselves because they are in this satisfaction. And we want to learn to be in our satisfaction, to be able to fully express our Queen of Cups-ness. Does that make sense? Have you tried to be Queen of Cups without a sense of satisfaction and comfort and gratitude? Impossibile. It's not possible. So we have a third question to come that's coming up. Let's look at that. The third card, or the third set of cards, is asking us what is possible. Perfect question, right? And for this question, we have 2 answers. The Five of Wands and the Hanged Man. One of my favorite cards, right? The Hanged Man. Do you know why? So, a very intriguing set of cards, and it took me a moment to wrap my head around this response. Initially. And frankly, when I first saw the cards come out of the deck, I went to a dark place briefly, thinking, well, what's possible? Sacrifice? Pain? Conflict? Is that what's possible? Is that what this is trying to remind us of, all the pain and discomfort that is possible in our lives? But no, there's another way of looking at this. So let's look at that other way of looking at this. And I love the depictions of both of these cards from this deck because they are different from Pamela Coleman Smith's art, which I love. Don't get me wrong. I love my Pamela Coleman Smith weight decks. I love them deeply. They're my first love of tarot. But in response to this question, what is possible? The Five of Wands. What did we see in this card? We saw what looks like cherubs, right? Instead of young men holding up one large battering stick in their hands, 5 men holding up a stick in each hand. I'm sorry, let me say that in English. 5 men, each of whom is holding a large stick to bash into another one. Instead of that, we have little cherubs, very beautiful, happy-looking cherubs down on the ground, and these 5 sticks up in the air. And so I don't see conflict in this card. I don't see rivalry. I don't see contention or quarrels in this card at all. I don't see it. These cherubs are playful. These cherubs are our inner child, I believe. They are our inner child. So what is possible? Rather than conflict, contention, quarrels, competition, perhaps, but what kind of competition? A playful kind of competition. It's let's play sticks. Let's play wands. Let's play fives. Let's play. Let's explore. Let's try and do stuff with what's around us. And these 3 little cherubs have found these 5 sticks and apparently are playing with them. And I think that is one thing that's possible. Instead of you picking up sticks and thinking, I can batter somebody over the head with this, picking up these sticks and saying, let's play. Going through and having our experiences, discovering things in our environment, and what's possible is having the reaction of, let's play. Not an irresponsible play, but the play of an artist, for example. The artist who playfully creates art. The musician who playfully composes. The scientist who playfully mixes stuff together and discovers what can be. The mathematician who playfully combines numbers and discovers new formulas. Let's play with what's around us. That's one aspect. The other aspect is a little bit more of a less active response to what is possible. On one side, the very playful, very fiery possibility is possible. On the other side, the quieter, more fixed, and in this card, a little bit disturbing, what looks like a fairy creature with wings. And the way that some people will catch a moth or a butterfly and pin it to a board, it kind of looks like that to me. It kind of looks like instead of a moth or a butterfly, a fairy has been pinned to something, perhaps a tree. And so this image was a little bit disturbing at first, because instead of a figure being tied or hanging from their foot upside down from a frame of some sort, which is uncomfortable, but unless they're there upside down for a very extended period of time, it's not something that's fatal. It's something that could be a choice even. I cannot see how this fairy figure would have chosen to have a pin driven through their back. So this image is a little bit upsetting for me at first. However, I can get past it, and hopefully you can too. This is a card often of perhaps it could be sacrifice. Perhaps it could be punishment for being a traitor. It could be something, a torture of some sort. But it can be something else. And let's go with that something else quality. Let's go with pause, with surrender to what is. Now that fairy that's pinned is not going anywhere. So instead of struggling against what's there, it can perhaps surrender to what is and let go of the struggle. And in so doing, get a new perspective. For me, the man in the Hanged Man is the card of new perspective. And that's the reason that I chose that card as my channel, my series name, The Hanged Man in the Moon. Because it's a card for me of new perspectives, of different perspectives, of seeing things in a different way. And sometimes that suspension can lead to prophecy and to grace. Oftentimes the Hanged Man has a glow about their heads, grace radiating from that figure. So what is possible? We got the play on one side, and the other side, pause, gaining a new perspective. Perhaps receiving prophecy, being able to prophesy, to receive grace, to radiate grace, and to let go of the struggle against what is and to see what can be, or to get a new perspective of what it is we are experiencing. And those are things that are possible. And perhaps because we can have that new perspective, instead of the Five of Wands being the competition and quarrel card, it can be a play card more easily. Let's look at the fourth question, because this is a very good conclusion to this spread. Perfect final question. How am I willing to change? Because that's what this whole spread is about, right? It's what am I willing to do? And so where did we start off from? We started off with the 5 elements. And generally, if we were to put it into a nutshell, we have the experiences and learn and grow from them. We sometimes react mentally, and sometimes that reaction can cause wounds, but we're always able to open up to our connection with all that is, with the oneness that is, with the divine presence and consciousness that we are all within. And as we do that, we can heal those traumas, those wounds within ourselves, and also become the gift of healing for others. And as we heal, we uncover our true nature, our inner child of playfulness. And so what needs to be completed? That first question, what needs to be completed? I want to make the choice to do the work of healing. And I want to embody my adventurous spirit, which radiates from my inner child. And what am I learning as I do that? I'm learning compassion. I'm learning to emotionally connect with all those around us as I connect with the eternal. Because I am also learning to be satisfied and comfortable where I am, and satisfied with and comfortable with who I am. And so what is possible from that? What is possible is I can get a new perspective from the Hanged Man. I can let go of my struggles with what is. And I can perhaps receive and experience grace. And as I do that, again, my inner child springs forth in play and exploration. So how am I willing to change? 2 interesting answers. 2 interesting answers which seem to flow from the Hanged Man, I believe. We have the Hermit and we have the 4 of Swords. The Hermit in this deck, rather than Pamela Coleman-Smith's image of the lone figure out on top of the mountains in perhaps a snowstorm, holding a light up, but outside, we see a figure inside their cave, looking out, perhaps even praying or communing with the divine as well as with themselves. Now, this is a card of soul searching, of introspection, of sometimes being alone, taking our alone time. We want our alone time as well as our connected time. Inner guidance, following the voice within, following the voice of the inner child. Wisdom. knowledge. Knowledge from, again, from experience, from life, from our understanding, our own understanding, the way that we have integrated the experiences that we've had in our lives. That's the hermit for me. And this hermit is in contemplation in their safe space, not bothered by anybody else. They found their alone space for themselves. And they gaze out on the night sky. As they gaze within, they also gaze out into the night sky, into the universe. I'm willing to do that. My inner child is willing to take that time because that's a different kind of exploration. We can also be playful within our meditation, within our introspection. We can be playful there too. It doesn't have to be serious. I'm going to meditate now. Oh. It can be playful. It can be light. It can be loving. It can be love. I'm doing metta meditation these days. And that is a meditation in love, of love, through love, with love. Love and kindness. Also, the Four of Swords is here to join the party, right? We got the Four of Swords, the card of meditation and contemplation and rest, relaxation and repose. And I think because this is with the hermit, it's emphasizing a little bit the meditation and contemplation aspect of the hermit, but it's also giving us the chance to stop, to take a moment, to pause, to heal, to rest, recovery, recuperation, healing. All of that is part of the Four of Swords, which is what we want to do. I'm willing to change. I'm willing to heal so that I can reveal my inner child, so that the power of my inner child can be revealed to myself and to those around us, around me, around us. Does that make sense? So how am I willing to change? To be able to do this whole thing, I want to change, and I'm willing to change, and I'm willing to heal. Again, that choice of healing from the first question, the Lover's card. I'm willing to choose healing. I'm willing to choose recovery. I'm willing to choose the pause of the Hanged Man so I can recover and get a new perspective. That I can also meditate, and I can contemplate, and I can play within myself as well as playing out in the world. This spread is amazing. It's beautiful and teaches so much, I believe. What do you think? I'd love to hear from you. So friends, just a reminder, a few reminders actually. There is going to be another video about 24 hours after I upload this one. There will be another video which I use Terre de Marseille to answer a question from this spread. And the question I pulled from this spread is just a reinforcing question, I believe. Because this is such a deep, dense spread. I wanted to get one brief, quick, perhaps even playful response to the question of, what does the inner child have to do with living an intentional life? I wanted to get a concise answer to that question. How does our inner child help us live an intentional life? How does that child guide us? Perhaps in a nutshell. So that video will be coming up in about 24 hours. In just a moment, here in this video, there will be a short clip giving you the names of the decks and the creators. And again, there are links below if you want to go check them out on your own. And friends, hit the like button if you haven't already, so that I know that you're here and that you've paid attention, or that you've come on this journey with me. And also those likes help the channel. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed, and hit the alarm bell so that you get notifications of when I upload videos. I usually do 2 a week. Sometimes I do 3. And share this with people who you think might get benefit from it. Share it on another platform. Spread the links around. And comment below. I would really love to hear from you. Does this make sense? Does it not make sense? Is your understanding of what an inner child is different from mine? Let's talk. If you'd like a private reading from me, if you would like a private reading from me, I will have a link below to my Instagram account. If you go to my Instagram account, you can send me a direct message and we can figure out a way for you to get a reading. And friends, now, as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.